So hello everybody, here's Paul Skorpen in southern Germany, in Bavaria, in Andex. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of update for the English-speaking people. It has to do with this seminar trip travel that I do with people since about 3 years, 3 years actually, to the island of Patmos, where not only did John receive the apocalypse there 2,000 years ago, but even before this time, the Greeks had a temple for Artemis and for Apollo and Aphrodite and so forth. So the island's been a holy place or divine place for a long, long time. And as I said, twice a year I've been leading German-speaking groups to Patmos. And what we've been doing, or what we do, we just did it now in June, now it's July, is we, over 7 days, we experience the Book of Revelations, the Apocalypse, on the inner level. In other words, the Apocalypse has nothing to do with the end of the world. It has to do with a deep, deep cleaning and transformation of ourselves. Incredibly, incredibly deep. I say that because, funny enough, in these last 2.5 years that I've been leading groups there, I always had an even number of participants. Either 16 or 14 or 12, it doesn't matter. It's a small group, intimate group. But I always had an even number, which means that I never got to experience what they experienced. I developed it, but I didn't ever experience it. And this June now, it was the first time that we had an uneven number of participants. So that means for the first time I, as the teacher, went through this. And it was probably one of the most extraordinary things that I've ever gone through. I feel now, even this is now over a month ago, I feel that this is a type of spiritual therapy that you just don't find in too many places. First of all, because Patmos isn't really on this earth, and it's not really in heaven. It's sort of in between. So when you're on Patmos, you're not really on the earth, and you're not in heaven. You're waiting for both the new earth and the heavenly Jerusalem to come together as one. There's that, and also because I'm a student of the Gospel of John, because of my time with Daskalos, and I know that the Gospel of John is built up out of seven I am, 7 miracles, and so forth. And as Jesus heals always on the 7th day or the 7th hour. Then only a few years ago did I realize that the Book of Revelations is also built up out of 7, and not only that, 7 times 7. It's built up out of actually 49 events. And Daskalos always said, each one of us is not only built up of 7 primary chakras, but each one of these primary chakras has 7 subplanes, meaning that each one of us partakes in 49 planes simultaneously. And if you put one and one together, you get the Offenbarung, the Book of Revelations, and what that means to us now. Well, all of us in spirituality, I hope, and everywhere, are keenly aware that we're going through a major paradigm shift, massive paradigm shift on all levels: economic, political, interpersonal, school system, the environment, and we're coming slowly into a new consciousness, and leaving an old consciousness behind and coming into a new consciousness is never easy, because we have to have a certain amount of trust that we're going in a good direction. But the old consciousness doesn't apply anymore. It doesn't work anymore. That's why everything around us is basically falling to pieces. And the Christ energy speaks to John. It's not per se Jesus only, but it is Jesus. It's the Christ energy, the resurrected Christ, or the universal Christ gives us the book of Revelations. And John receives them, and Prochorus writes them down. And so what we've been doing now is we get together on Sunday we start. This September I'll be there with a group of English-speaking people. Right now we're about 6, so there's place for more. That's why I'm making this video. If you're interested in the deep spiritual therapy, this is something you shouldn't miss. I mean, you can go to Patmos by yourselves, but you need to have somebody who knows that the Offenbarung is basically a key, or 7 keys, to a massive transformation. So, for example, on the first day, we talk a little bit about the 7 letters that the 7 communities receive. They're wake-up calls. To Ephesus, Smyrna, they're in present-day Turkey. They're communities, and the Christ wants to correct them. So the Christ writes 7 letters, and for me, it's clear that it's the 7 chakras. Okay, it describes perfectly the state of the 7 chakras. Yet now, where are we standing 2,000 years later? And so we talk about that. We do a meditation, a guided meditation. I lead that. I've been leading it in German, and trust me, that's not the easiest thing to read in German, the Book of Revelations. That's why I would love to. That's why I'm looking forward to teaching it in English. And we experience that as a meditation. And then later in the day, we do a hands-on treatment with each other. So if I was the healer, I would lay my hands on the root chakra or the pelvic bone. You can't lay your hands on the root chakra. And then read these letters into the 7 chakras. And then the chakras start a process of transformation. And then the next day, what happens is, it's almost logical, but it's unbelievable. Then the 7 seals in the 7 chakras are closed since the beginning of time, and only God knows what's in them. And nobody's allowed to open it except the Lamb of God, the Christ. So the Lamb of God, the Christ, opens the seals, because he's the only one worthy. And then from the lower chakras become these 4 horses. And this is, I see this, and you experience this, is what I experience, is that deep within the chakras are these original forces. They're immense. They are, you can't measure them. They're so strong. I've been reading the Gospel of Thomas, and Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, there's a light in every man who's a son of God, a light in every man which is light enough to light the whole world. Or when 2 come together in a house, they can tell to a mountain, move, and the mountain will move. This is what we're talking about. And because of the letters that they received on the first day, these original energies are now freed, and a deep cleaning from inside out starts to transpire. And then, the third day, the trumpets, the 7 archangels blow trumpets, blazon, blow. They play the trumpets, which are vibrations, and they play them into the chakras. That, for example, 1/3 of your forests will die, 1/3 of your mountains will fall into the sea, 1/3 of all the animals in the oceans will die, 1/3 of the stars will fall from the heavens. And what is this 30%? 33% of us which dies on this third day is karma. You just don't need it anymore. You just don't need it anymore. There's so much we don't need anymore now. Because a lot of what we believed, and a lot of the dogmatism, and a lot of the wisdom, it doesn't apply anymore. And on the island of Patmos, 1/3 of it on this day will die. You'll feel it. It's like being gutted. And you're so glad that you're gutted in the end. Okay, and then there's a little bit of a pause on the 4th day. Then there's 7 visions with the dragon, which is the ego or the Antichrist, Satan, and the woman, Sophia, who's pregnant with a child, and she's having contractions, and the dragon wants to go against her because it doesn't want this child to come into the world, and she gives birth to this child, and the child runs to God and stays by God, and she has to go to the desert, and she's given 2 wings, and she goes to the desert that the dragon won't kill her. And then the next day is another 7 visions. It has to do with the Lamb of God and the archangels. And then the 5th day, the cleaning continues. The 7 archangels bring 7 bowls filled with poison. And they pour these 7 bowls into the 7 chakras. That another part of us will no longer remain in us. And we're perfectly prepared for this. These steps are unbelievable. And then there's 7 visions, and this has to do with the fall of Babylon. So Babylon is this city which we build to come into contact with God, and that has to fall. And then the last day, which is the day we finish, there's an incredible wedding between the Lamb of God and Sophia. And because the new earth has been prepared, that's us. We've been transformed through these 6 days. And on the 7th day, we are a new earth. Because you cannot pour new wine into an old wine, whatever it's called, wine shop. It'll burst. And then, at the end, the holy city comes down. And the city is described as a place where there's no single temple. There's no church, there's no synagogue, there's no mosque, there's nothing. It's totally united. Totally free of division. And it comes into complete union with the new earth. So that's just, you can see that I'm still in this. And it was, like I said, it was probably the most extraordinary thing that I've went through in a long, long time. Just to get these 7 treatments and to give them. I know I've heard from people over the last few years what it's like to get them and what to give them and how it is to give them. And I saw how they changed. But I went through it myself. And I must say, this is something I wouldn't, as I said, not necessarily with me, but you have to know somebody who teaches like this. Like, this is totally inspired by Douglas and John. If you have time this year, I'm going to be there on the 24th of September to the 30th, 2018. The hotel is booked. The hotel is our oasis. It's our protection. It's the last week that they're open. Even though it's 80 degrees outside and sunny. Patmos closes down at the end of September. And we have a nice group so far. 2 Americans who I know for a long time. Students of mine from back when I was teaching in the States, and a couple of good Danish friends of mine who also studied with me. A Norwegian woman and a German woman, so we're around 6, and that's enough for me, and we'll do it. But as I said, there's place left because there's 13 units at this hotel, all of them with a living room, a bedroom, a kitchenette, and a bathroom, and a terrace which overlooks the Mediterranean Sea. And the cost to attend without a flight, you have to book your own flights because I have no idea where you're going to come from, is 1,500 euros for the 7 days. That includes 7 nights at this really nice hotel. And if you want a single room, you have to pay an extra 200 euros. And that includes breakfast, and it includes 2 day trips, a bus ride around the island, and also a boat ride to some of the nice islands around there. But lunch and dinner we'll be taking either at the hotel, the food's quite good there, or in some nice, really nice restaurants which are on the island. So it's not only, it's an extremely intense cleaning, but we also have a really nice time. We're on an island which even the people who are born there say they can't leave it because it's a paradise. The island's a paradise. It's a paradise. But it's also a door to paradise. And that's what makes this island special. And that's what makes this week together really special, because you feel that the island's alive. She's alive. Okay, so if you have time to join me, if you need any more information, please write me at contact@theosoph.com. I just wrote a description about what I just talked about in English and in German, and I can send it to you if you're interested. But as I said, if anybody has the time and the money to join this September, I cannot promise you that I'm going to offer this again in English next year. The German groups are full. That's twice a year. Next year it's in Pentecost. But for some reason, even though I've tried to plan an English-speaking group, it hasn't materialized. And this year it's materializing. I cannot promise you next year it'll materialize. I would love to, because I would love, just egoistically, I would love to teach it in my own language. I'm getting used to reading some of this stuff in German. This, just as an ending, this past June, a month ago, 6 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, when I was there, my daughter and my son joined me. They didn't take the course, of course, but they love the island, and we were doing this boat ride to the different islands on Wednesday. And then I take the treatment forms with me, because in case we run out of time, you can actually do it on the beach. And my daughter, Jana, we were having coffee on one of the islands, and she said, "Papa, can I look at this?" I said, "Yeah, it's just a description form." And it was the day that we were going to receive the 7 trumpets. And she looked at me and she said, "Papa, I thought you were a healer." I said, "Well, some people call me that, Jana." And she said, "You can't be a healer when you do this to the people. This is sadistic." I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "Papa, have you read this? A third of the stars fall to earth. A third of the mountains fall to the bottom of the sea. A third of the fish in the ocean die. This is not healing. This is." And I said, "Jana, someday we can talk about this, but I can tell you that if you wait and just stay with us until Sunday, you'll see what that means, because this wedding on Saturday, this wedding between the Christ and as the Lamb of God and the woman, and then the heavenly Jerusalem and the earthly and the new earth is something that it's time for." Okay, thank you for your time. Take care. Have a good summer.